So, welcome to another episode of Cosmic Echo. A lot has happened since the last time I did interviews with authors and things like that, but we're doing a little bit of a different structure this time where sitting down with friends and we're just having discussions about things we're interested in. It's not that we really know any of this stuff, so don't think that we're professionals or experts in any of the fields that we're talking about. It's just something that we enjoy. And a lot has happened in my life since I was doing the podcast a few years ago. So, but we can talk about all those things eventually, hopefully, as we go forward. So I'm with my friend
Chet. It's yeah. Just, sorry, a little clumsy off the start, but yeah. Anyways, my name's Chet. I think we've known each other 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, I don't even know how long. Time escapes me most of the times.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Yeah, but like two magnets, we were drawn to each other, and it's been just lots of hanging out and talking. And after a while, we thought maybe other people would not only be interested in listening, but maybe even engaging into some of these conversations. As Lee says, I think we've all had a lot happen in the last few years too, but how it's going to be interesting to unpack it all and go through it. And I think if it helps anyone or anyone just enjoys listening to it, like then it would be beneficial than more than just us doing it by
Yeah.
ourselves, because usually we just go sit down in a restaurant and do this
Yeah,
alone.
Sherry's. Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's my favorite restaurant ever.
yeah, so now we get to sit down and hopefully, if anyone's ever interested into it, and I think it's going to be a vast, wide range of conversations in
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of way. They're probably always going to center back to the etheric somehow, I feel like, but not to be too predictive. But anyways, yeah, so I'm excited, and maybe we'll get guests and other people to talk about some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm planning to bring in maybe Richard sometime, another
Yeah.
friend of, that Chet knows, and who knows, maybe some other guests that pop up online or something like that. I started Discord, so people can join the Discord. We'll put a link in the comments, and then you can go there and you can join in the Discord. There's no one in there right now besides me, and so
Gotta start somewhere.
you gotta start somewhere. And if you're interested in having a talk with us, you can go in there and post about wanting to talk. But Chet and I was sitting down previous to starting recording. We were talking about all kinds of cool stuff, but it's hard to hit the record button. But just to give a little background about things that have changed in my life in the last few years, and then Chet can talk about his too, because we've kind of grown together, I think, in the last few years.
Definitely.
And I was really trying to search for answers back then, and that's why I was interviewing book authors to kind of like learn from quote unquote experts about these subjects. And I also was going to Pacifica Graduate Institute trying to do my master's and PhD, and then writing a book at the same time. And so my book got published on lucid dreams, and then Pacifica kind of dropped out because of COVID. But I was learning a lot about Carl Jung back then, and really kind of obsessed about him, and tried to get Ringel Chet in there.
Yeah.
And his stuff was good, but just like any person, I think there's lacking knowledge there, and especially a person of that time, and but that brought me to eventually alchemy in his work, and then that really kind of opened me up to an entirely different world, seeing the world from kind of a alchemical perspective and magical perspective, and synchronicities started happening too. So
Yeah.
and they kind of just took off from there. So I think that's about as much background as I want to really get, because through conversation I think we'll get a lot in there. But Chet and I met through gathering of mushrooms, so
Yeah.
which I was really into back then too. So
Well, we were,
Yeah.
like you said, you were searching for answers, right? And I was, or still am. I don't know that I've found many. But yeah, I had discovered psychedelic substances, and I had felt a connection to the ethereal for the first time in my life, and I was finally chasing something greater than the self. And that's why, like, it really felt like magnetism. Like, it was coincidental to the max, I guess. You could call it fate. It almost felt fatalistic. We were talking, I don't know, something about where people live. Now we're in a Pacific Northwest site. That's where we're from. And then it turns out we live in the same town. And then, we just wanted to get together and talk about this different stuff that we're interested in. And then before long, yeah, you were talking to me about Carl Jung and stuff. And I think, to get to the alchemy thing real quick, I've been trying to figure out when your fascination came into alchemy, because you say it was within our friendship, but as you have this website, Tail Eaters, and
Right.
that's an alchemical principle,
Right.
and it's, or I don't know, Hermetic
Yeah.
Principle, I guess you could call it too, but like all these, whatever you would call ancient wisdoms, I'm still unsure how to classify them, other than they seem to have a common thread. But, you know, I described it like that movie Arrival,
Right.
where it's like she started learning the language, and within that time stopped experiencing, or she stopped experiencing a linear fashion, and it was more in like one singular moment. And I almost think that's what synchronicities are, is
Right.
that you were experiencing a backfeed of this a long time ago, as if like inherently we were already doing these conversations in time before they were ever happening. I
Yeah.
know that sounds really crazy, so
No, that's
if we
cool.
venture out crazy roads, just know that's why. But it's, it's weird to me how these things have come, and so as I've dived more into this world, I'm like, well, you say your alchemical interest started a couple of years ago, but man, I like, and even
Yeah.
Young himself was an alchemist, right? And like, or I think you could identify almost all the most influential, powerful people on planet Earth of doing some kind of this stuff,
Right. Yeah.
what someone would call alchemy or occultism. I'm still unsure how we can work on defining the differences, but that these great people have always been working with greater forces to achieve things, and I've found like the more greatness I study, the more I find this same principle of like, yeah, you could call it alchemy or you could call it occultism, or whatever. And I've found that really interesting. So when you bring up that your alchemical interest happened not long ago, I'm like, yeah, I think I spend a lot of time thinking about this, because I'm
Yeah.
like, you have a
Probably
whole,
more than me.
yeah, probably, you have this whole website, and this
Yeah.
whole tail eaters concept that I came into after. I mean,
Yeah.
you had introduced me, but then all of a sudden, like we're talking about this stuff, and I'm researching
Yeah.
into it, and I forget what's the term that it's called, the
Oh, like the Ouroboros? Yeah.
Ouroboros, yeah, and I heard someone say it, and then I'm looking up it online, and then I'm like, well, like this is, and
Yeah.
I don't know if people know, but you got the tail eaters idea from a psychedelic vision,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do you want
Yeah.
to?
I took ayahuasca and this snake kept eating me over and over again. And then, um, I think at the time though, I may have known like that symbol or seen that symbol. It's hard
Yeah,
to really know.
yeah,
It was quite a while ago too. But, then and then I was like, oh, that seems like an important, experience for some reason.
yeah,
So, even the logo is the ayahuasca vine, and it turns into the snake, and then the snake eats itself. So, most people don't see that image there, but that's
yeah,
kind of where the whole idea came from. But you're right about the alchemy. The more I go down into it, it's kind of alchemy is just like this describing life, in a process of change. So, in kind of going into, you know, officially kind of going into alchemy and like the Hermetic principles and Kabbalah and things like that, you start kind of seeing these patterns that like you're saying, you've experienced them all your life. You've experienced them in altered states. You've experienced them in dreams, psychedelic experiences, and so on. Even like UFO experiences. Those are all, some type of alchemical process.
Yeah.
Hermetic principles to make you change, to cause change in some way, driving you towards knowing yourself, like the capital S, as Jung would say.
Right.
So
I find it interesting. A lot of these civilizations never write. These ancient wisdoms, or these groups, they don't write stuff down, right? And that seems confusing on the outside looking in, but then you start to do the research of this and you realize that all the information's within already. You just have to get the kind of building blocks of understanding there, and then through reasoning and questioning, you can come to the answers too.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anyone's born with a genius level of understanding. I think some people are able to parse through subjects better than others naturally. But the fact is like, and I don't want to say I'm capable of being an Elon Musk, but he's not this alien people make him out to be.
Yeah. Well, we don't know for sure. Right?
Well, we don't know for sure. He might be. But he's just someone who understands the basic processes of everything, and he's always been curious into them, right? Yeah. And then as he goes on through life, like, it just has benefited him, obviously, to the tune of being Dr. Evil Rich. But, and I find it interesting, as soon as I was like, oh, okay, that's the reason. I found, about the Druids?
I mean, somewhat, yeah.
Yeah.
I know of them.
So and not that anyone celebrates St. Patrick's Day too heavily, but there was no snakes in Ireland. Ireland's cold, right?
Yeah.
So what did St. Patrick and the Catholic Church go get rid of? Well, I would point to the Caduceus staff, because the Druids were Hermetists, Hermeticists.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Yeah, right? Maybe by the end of this whole ordeal we'll learn how.
Somebody might comment.
And the first thing you read about the Druids is they didn't write anything down, just like, and I know yogis and Hindus are probably the most prolific writers of everything.
Some of them,
yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of untaught knowledge and to touch on the writing thing, I never really thought about it until now. It's like, maybe, most knowledge was passed like word of mouth in, most of the history of humanity that we know of.
Right.
And it wasn't until like more recently that people started writing, and we think of them as like people that can't read or write, or as idiots,
Yeah.
But you have this oral tradition that utilizes a different part of your brain, because like remembering through word of mouth is vastly different than reading and remembering.
Yeah.
And we don't really think about that. And so maybe it drove us, like you were talking about technology and stuff before the recording. Maybe it drove us to be in a certain way when previous societies and cultures weren't that way, because they didn't utilize that stuff. So they were more maybe in touch with nature versus like extracted from it, because they kept focusing on books and knowledge through reading and writing.
Yeah.
So like oral traditions seem to be really important. And then also like the internal, like when you don't have a book to go to remember things, you have to internally trust yourself to remember it. And how often do we actually do that nowadays? Like, to trust the ability for us to be told something once and then recall it, like that doesn't happen. We trust Google,
Yeah. White Western Americans will mock natives for not having their traditions written down, but if you were to listen to how they instruct and spend a lifetime passing these stories down to the next generation, it's not taken lightly. Whether it be metaphoric or true, I don't know, but there's certainly not. It's not the game of telephone you played in middle school where you get to the end of the class and all of a sudden it's something way different. No, this is, and so books are interesting because we can pass knowledge through time.
Right, yeah. long
however
periods
long,
of time, yeah,
right?
and accurate.
Fairly accurate,
Yeah.
but we no doubt lose a lot. It's like a percentage of the person, and it's not
Right.
much of the person at that. Like if you're reading Hemingway, it's nowhere comparable to sitting there and listen to, like you and I are listening to Ernest Hemingway speak. You would be blown away by someone just experiencing the human who wrote all that word. But instead, people, and that's an amazing power to be able to write down something and have people be blown away by just your writing. But at the end of the day, that's just a small degree of their power.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to someone and you're making sure that the stories are passed down, it would make sense that it would set more into your memory. I think reading's interesting. I kind of laugh at myself. When I was younger, I wouldn't read, and then I read a Harry Potter book, and I felt like my brain was working faster than it ever did, and I was like, this reading thing ain't so bad. But it's not, it's still, a percentage of just being able to orate the story to someone else, and I think that what you're saying is important,
Yeah, like we were talking before about music and recording and things like that too, because we were listening to our voice and how different it sounds. As a recording, like everybody hears our voice in a certain way, but like in person, the voice can be different, or the feeling and the emotion and everything like that. Like I did most of my recordings online before this, so like I didn't really sit down with somebody, and it's very different, like sitting down and listening to somebody talk, and it kind of brings a little bit more magic to it. Another thing is like tie in a Joe Rogan podcast that Chet and I both listened to recently with I don't even know how to pronounce his name.
Sadhguru, just literally legitimately Sadhguru. He says it a lot faster, but SADH guru,
with his nice accent too.
Yeah.
He brought up something that was interesting in there, and that he said he doesn't read books.
Yeah.
I don't even know. He claims he never read a book.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he can read, and write. But so I'm not sure how that worked out. But either way, he kind of implied that the knowledge that he came to is either from somebody telling him or his self-reflection into having experience and then just diving deep into himself. I think there's more to that people really give people credit for. It's like I've been sitting a lot lately, like doing meditation, trying to like Kriya yoga type meditation, and every time I do it, I'm amazed by like the sensations that I get, and like how loud my body becomes, and like how I can actually like hear things and see things inside myself that I never was capable of doing before, or even understood what that was.
Yeah.
Like some of the things, like I've experienced them before, but I didn't know what they were. And so like I had to get to a new point where I could experience them even more, like they amplify.
Yeah.
To the point I was like, oh, like that's what I'm hearing, or that's what I'm experiencing. And so like the internal, I don't think people realize like how loud the body is and can communicate in a very verbal and real way to the individual. So there's some credence to what he said. I think there's a lot of credence to what he says.
Nikola Tesla, who's someone he might have been very weird if you want to get into the weird stuff, but as far as his mind goes, I have a ton of respect for the way he thought. And he said, we're not transceivers, we're receivers. And it's an important delineation, because I even used to think of us as like someone who could broadcast or receive, but it really, we're probably always receiving, and we're so distracted. Like one of my biggest, and I'm not that cut off from it, so don't let me sit here and try to preach, but Western culture, and my wife works from home. She'll work on the couch, and I looked over one day and I counted, and she had 6 screens in front of her face. Cell phone, computer, 2 monitors to go with the work computer, and then a TV on in the background. And I can't imagine the level of distraction. I mean, how much are you missing of what your body's going through And I'll tell people, I work a job where we're isolated for a long time. I'll recommend people turn off the radio, turn off the influence for a while, and when you get uncomfortable, break through that and keep going, because in that you'll really start to learn some stuff. And then, so the Kriya Yoga you brought up, this, it's been a big one for me. I'm not super into like what Americans would call yoga stretching. It's hard to spend an hour several times a week. It's rewarding if you complete it. But then, so, and Sadhguru brings this up. There's the 4 different kinds of yoga, and I don't know the names of them, but he does bring up Kriya Yoga, energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were expressing a minute ago about that, it made me think of, I'll talk to people, and I realize that I come off really intense because I have this like energy and passion behind the things I talk about. And sometimes I feel like that intimidates people because they're very used to getting things at like a dulcet, set tone of whatever their computer, TV, radio is set at. And then you get this human energetic present that's like in your face, excited about something, and you walk away from them, and I'm like, oh shoot, I think that might have been a bit intense, you know, like I probably should have backed off a little. But the fact is I have this, I get fired up, you know, not just angry, but like I get excited and passionate. And that's, so the Kriya Yoga, getting through, sorry if it seems like I'm all over the place, but getting to the energy aspect of it. So you exposed it to me. I do wish I was more diligent about doing it daily.
Oh, me too.
But when I can remember to do it, whether it be, I mean, you can do it, like I've done it in the shower, I've done it driving, and every time I'm doing it, just like you say, I'm amazed at the response I get back from the body in many different ways. Now, you said you opened up your third eye, right?
I mean, I saw what
controversial statement alert. No, I'm just kidding.
No, in Kriya Yoga, they describe like the spiritual eye.
Right.
And so, like in meditation that I was doing before, I was introduced to any formal type of meditation like Kriya Yoga, I had like some experience in like getting educated in like how Buddhists kind of meditate, and like there's lots of different meditations in Buddhism and many different cultures anyways. So that's like another book.
These roads go deep and long, yeah.
So I'm not an expert. But
by the way, I don't think there's any masters. I think there's just students who have studied longer than others.
Yeah.
So that's a personal philosophy of mine. Yeah. I mean, even a master is still learning. No one's completed the journey, you know. So
I'm cautious of anybody who really calls themselves a guru. I think most people are nowadays anyways. But I've watched enough cult documentaries nowadays and other things like that.
God, you say that, but people want to be manipulated. If you look at the last couple years,
sometimes it's good to have a guide, you know.
It's
I would probably follow somebody, you know. I had dreams about that.
Yeah.
But so I was doing meditation just by myself, kind of. In about like 45 minutes, I'd see like lights kind of like swirling around my eyes, and I just thought, well, that's what happens to people. Because nobody really talks about meditation, I don't think, too much. They kind of just like, oh, I'd sit there and I quiet my mind, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what happens?
You start asking questions. They don't have answers. You're like,
I don't know. I just sit there.
Right.
Sometimes like the voices get loud, you know.
Yeah.
You're like, okay. So for me, like things would get very quiet, and then I see these lights start kind of coming around, and they would kind of like a TV set, like an old TV where the lines are kind of going up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty much it. I was like, I don't know what that is, you know. There's another guy that does a podcast, Mike from Mike and Maurice. They run a podcast, and Mike actually mentioned to me that he sees those lights too, and he didn't know what they were either. So he ended up asking Rick Straussman about it, And
Rick Straussman, I assume
yeah,
most of your listeners know, is the guy who wrote the Spirit Molecule
yeah.
book. Just in case you, sorry, anyways.
No, it's all good. Good to have backstory. So they asked him, and he didn't know, but he thought maybe it was related to some type of DMT or something, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I started watching these YouTube videos by this guy. His first name is Forrest, but he has a YouTube series on Kriya Yoga, and he goes into like the spiritual eye and like how it kind of changes over time through meditation and stuff. And sure enough, you know, like pretty much the lights, I realized recently, follow a pattern of the same pattern that the electrical waves to the earth do. And if you go down that rabbit hole, essentially like the Hebrew language is most likely created out of those waves, like the shapes of them at certain angles. And so, you know, and then you apply like an alchemical aspect to it, like so as below, so as above.
Uh-huh.
You know, can't say it right, but you know, like when you do that and you think about yourself, well, you also contain the same waves as the earth does, these magnetic forces, and you can visually see them in your mind. And so like the actual spiritual eye that they're describing is actually a wave, that same wave, and to me you're looking down into it. So you're looking like imagine the earth like being, you know, north and south poles.
Yeah.
And you're actually looking down into like the North Pole, into it, and you see the way, like this is how I see it. I see those waves moving around in a certain form, the same waves and how they move through the earth. And then I see the compression of that field into a single spot, which is a star, and then you see these rings. And so it looks, you know, it kind of looks like a butthole, you know, to be honest with you.
No, if you can't hear me laughing about this right now, 'cause I have the biggest shitting grin on my face because I watched this video. Anyways, I'll let you finish.
So that's what it looks like to me. But
Uh-huh.
and then he teaches some like some practices that kind of allow you to see it better. And so there's like no real opening, you know, like
Is there a shape, a geometric shape that kind of has all the line, like it looks circular, but it's not. It's a circle.
Yeah, there's like I mean it morphs.
Yeah.
So like to me it literally looks like an eye. So like it depends there, it's very confusing because like the pineal gland actually acts as a third eye, like a physical eye.
Yeah, it's even in reptiles got a retina and everything.
People that study waves and compression and things like that, and they apply that when this wave compresses, it actually opens up like a fourth dimensional portal to other waves that are compressed like that. And that compression is actually the essence of what we call like love. And so like everything that is good and is love desires to be compressed into that point so it can feed each other essentially with the same material. And like the Kabbalists and the cultists would call this like ansophora, which is like a fourth dimensional magnetic wave material. It actually is a material that has substance to it.
Ansophora?
Yeah.
ANSO, just
it's like AINSOU. Gosh,
because my wife she uses a makeup company called Sephora. Yeah. So
well, there's An, and then there's Soph, and then there's An, and then Ansoph, and then there's Ansophora. So it comes in like 3 phases, and that makes this whole thing, which is actually, I think, defining the spiritual eye too.
All right, so we were talking about no, sorry, I'm not. No. I don't want to steamroll.
I'm just having a realization here.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm coming into this from magnetism. I've been obsessed with magnetism lately, And we could even link the video on the notes if you wanted to. But there's this 20-minute YouTube video that I was watching last night. And this guy takes two magnets he takes a magnet and he calls this thing he puts it through, it's like a less than a micron thin layer of fluid that he doesn't explain what it is, but that his buddy came up with something. And it's the exact same shape you're describing. They crisscross, and it's not that they're changing directions, it's that you're looking at the two poles sending out from the same direction, but because the poles sit opposite of each other, it creates that same shape you're talking about of the intertwined lines in a circular depth pattern. He's showing this, and it has depth to this that you can't believe. And so and I've been obsessed with weird stuff lately. Like the Nazis have allegedly the Nazis had this thing called Die Glocken, which stood for the bell, and it was, I think it's in Ukraine, which what isn't in Ukraine, but they were pumping allegedly more electricity to this one thing than America was using to produce all the bombs that it made in World War II. And I never could understand why. And then I started looking into magnetism and electromagnetism and the interaction between the two. And I think the key, this is the dumbest, most arrogant thing you'll hear me, but I think the key to opening up a portal to wherever, I don't know where it would be. Then theoretical physicists will talk about wormholes.
Yeah.
Would be a high level of electromagnetic energy, and then you could open a portal to wherever. And if anyone ever listened and heard of the Skinwalker Ranch or even the Bermuda Triangle, there's a magnetic ley line on planet Earth, and there's areas filled with stone and rock of magnetic material that could very well naturally or unnaturally create these vortexes that grant anything that knows how to use it access through whatever we're into you're in. So when you're describing this to me, I'm seeing a literal wormhole. Yeah.
So the reason I kind of came to spot, I guess, as far back as I can remember, really, is I would be in a dream state, and so this is kind of outside of meditation or whatever, but I'd be in a dream state, but you remind me of it. I'd be in a dream state, and I'd be in like a sleep paralysis state, and what I would do is, or even a lucid state, is I would do this thing that's like, I would squeeze my body, right? Like it felt like I was squeezing my body. And if I got lucid, what I'd do is I'd fall on my back. And first it started with me spinning in circles. And if I span in a circle, then it seemed to create this compression, this feeling of pressure. And I don't know why I did it. I just thought it felt good. And then when I span, then like the reality around me in the dream would change, and it also allowed me to extend the dream longer. So I'd stay asleep longer in a lucid dream because I didn't want to wake up. I'm having cool experience.
Right, yeah. I mean, I can only imagine, but I bet, yeah.
So then I had this idea, well, I'll just fall on my back, for some reason. And so I fell on my back, and it felt like pressure was building up. This intense pressure was building up, more and more and more pressure. It almost felt like I was going to break my body.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to see how far it goes, And so I just kept going and going and going as long as I could one day. And finally, I started seeing things in my room, like lights and stuff. I'm in a dream, but I start seeing things. And I find out that I'm in my room, but I'm a point on the wall. So like a point of light. I could see myself kind of in a way. But I had no arms, I had no body, I had nothing. And I was just stuck in the corner of my room on the wall, like a point. And I was like, this is going to be like this forever, And then I eventually woke up, thankfully. But Then I kept doing it, and I kept falling into this. I kept falling on my back and going into this like this compression thing, and it would be a tunnel. I started looking around, and there'd be a tunnel, and there'd be like, I could touch the walls too, and it was this black material on the wall,
Yeah.
and I was like, what is this stuff? And so eventually, like after many dreams of doing this, I moved into the material in the wall, and I'd listen to it, and I was like, what is this? And it would like sing like music,
Uh-huh.
and I had the sense that this material was like what made up everything.
Yeah.
Like it was conscious and it made up everything. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And this is prior to me even reading anything about the Ansophora stuff.
Right.
But what I think was happening and is happening, and I try to get other people to do this just to see what they see without telling them. Because it seems safe,
Yeah.
doesn't mess me up and hasn't messed other people up.
I think if you're one of these people that can access this type of thing, that you're probably in a secure spot.
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Yeah, I think it's the people who accidentally access this stuff
Yeah.
who weren't. I don't know if ready is the right
yeah.
word, but
Yeah.
whatever. That they stumble upon this and maybe
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem, dude.
Try to get people to do this.
Yeah, so I kept falling into this tunnel and feeling compression, but in looking at what this was, what I think is what I'm seeing is actually the torus, and I'm actually compressing myself into a point through the compression, and then I'm actually entering a tunnel. It looks like a tunnel, but a wormhole.
Yeah.
And then I'm somehow in that space, and then what happens is I would start calling out people's names that I wanted to visit or places to go or even ideas. So I'd yell out in this tunnel my intention of where I wanted to go,
Yeah.
and I'd start being pulled to wherever it'd take me, and it'd feel like wind was pulling me and pushing me around, and then it would stop. And
Yeah.
I'd look around and I'd be wherever I wanted to go.
I get the vision of the movie Contact that Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
There's a
not
lot like
accidental.
So what drives me insane with all this stuff is that all these like metaphysicists and everything, right?
Yeah.
They're obsessed with like making technology that can do this, right?
Yeah.
But really, I think humans are capable of doing it already, and with like a little practice, you could do it.
Yeah.
And then you could travel wherever you wanted to travel.
Right. And so I have a weird fascination, and when I say I'm not pro-Nazi by any means, I think the Nazis
I don't know.
were abhorrent in what they did, but they were studying a lot of occultist type stuff,
Right.
and weird stuff. And they were studying the internal because they held Francis Bardone prisoner, trying to get him to relinquish his secrets. Now, if you don't know who Francis Bardone is, it's hard to find much information about him. I guess he's a magician, for lack of a better phrase, and he was born in Eastern Europe in the 1900s, and the Nazis took him so serious they held him prisoner.
You said torture, like
they tortured him to try to get his knowledge out, and then they had the Daglaken, the bell, and if you even want to get into Admiral Byrd's Operation High Jump, where an admiral of the U.S. Navy claims in his diary that he got abducted by UFOs in the Antarctic, taken to a tropical base filled with Norwegian-looking people,
Yeah.
Nazi regalia, even people with German-sounding accents, and it sounds so fantasiful. But maybe the Nazis specifically, understood the magnetic principle, and maybe not only were they trying to get out that you can do this in your own head, but what if you could take the physical with you? Because I think if you look into this stuff, there are entities who can bring it's it's consciousness, it's physical, it's something in between the both. If people have these crazy encounters with paranormal type entities of all different kinds. And if you really get deep into the weeds, you can talk about standing dogs smoking cigarettes to like Bigfoots that people have shot at that disappear. Like there's all sorts of different stuff. But at the root of it, do entities, wherever the other side is there's probably many other sides, I guess, if you look at the theoretical math of it, they can probably take their physical being through it. And that's what I was wondering if the Nazis weren't doing, because the mystics, the yogis, that's what they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. Is they're compressing their spirituality into the magnetic center, or at least what I think's happening.
Right.
And within that, they can transfer it.
Yeah, they probably describe it in different ways. That's the problem, though, is like all these people are using different languages to describe the same experience, and it kind of takes like, somebody that's had the experience and kind of read some of that knowledge, and then to explain it to Westerners essentially, or even anybody really anymore, because we're all pretty much Western now.
Yeah.
And explain it in a way that makes sense to us, because we no longer understand even ourselves. So like we're kind of lost, and they're like, the language that they're using is actually a lot more advanced, like in how they're describing things or symbolically representing things, that they're kind of dumbing it down in a way to make sense to us.
Right.
They're like, it wouldn't make sense to like explain it, to people in the past. Really, it would make sense for them to experience it, and then to trust the experience, versus like us, we're like, well, why do we want to do that? Because I don't know it's real, You're not explaining it to me in a way that makes it real. Where's the research paper that shows this is real?
Right.
Like, why would I do that? And you're like I talk to a friend of mine often. We have lunch once a week, and I explained to him like the importance of some of these things that I've learned, like how, the most basic things, and a common thing is like, well, why would I do that? Where's the benefit, and it's like, well, just do it and then you'll see the benefit. Like, but that's really hard for somebody to do, even myself, it's like, well, why would I do that? But now, because I've gone through enough experiences, I kind of trust people that can explain their experiences enough that I relate to. I'm like, oh, okay, it's like that, so I'll do this and then I'll have like that experience.
For me, it was a taste. It was and it probably started with a psychedelic compound, but the first time you feel something more than yourself for the great expanse, and then different kind of stuff between exercise or breathing or yoga, even like you get these experiences. For me, dreams, while they play a different role for me than you, I've had some powerful dreams, and including going back to my childhood where, you imagine yourself not remembering your dreams, and I could be making up these dreams, but I have these kind of clear recollections of dreams of seemingly being really important, and I don't know if they're messages from you or the great beyond or whatever else, but I don't think we dream a lot as a culture anymore. Western society, influenced by a bunch of different things from diet to electricity to phone, I don't know if the dream experience is there as much,
No, it's
so
not.
We live in this individualistic, materialistic society where no one, if you start talking about an expansive experience, that was a lot of, anyways, if you start talking, people, it's not tangible. They can't touch it. It doesn't put food on their table. It doesn't pay the light
the
bill.
benefit,
right. But at the end of the day, if you could explain you being genuinely a kinder, more compassionate person is the benefit.
Right.
And it has backfired on me a little. I found myself being, because, and I'm not trying to claim compassion or love or anything, but trying to be open to people, it allows them to kind of lay their energy
Oh
on
yeah,
me.
yeah.
And then I leave feeling drained.
Yeah.
And
Vampires.
yeah, and it happened today where it's just everyone's laying their stuff on me, and it's like, I don't know, it's hard that way. So I commend people who can take on other people's issues and not let it bother them. But
yeah, I don't know. I think that's a learned skill that you eventually kind of get to once you realize like you're doing good, that you realize you're taking it on. You know, like for me, I spent a lot of. I think I have that same tendency. People like to talk to me. They like to come over for, you know, maybe come over for a drink, and it turns into a therapy session without me really realizing what's going on. And so some people are, I think, driven to do that. You know, like people just pick up a sense of like you have compassion maybe for them, or you're listening, and then they open up and you're like, oh, I didn't know like this was happening.
yeah.
And so what would happen is, you know, they leave, or you have a very deep, profound conversation with somebody that you didn't expect, and they're gone, you know, but now you're like stuck with that stuff in you, you know.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to learn to like let it go, you know, and get rid of it and be like, that's not my stuff, you know, like you need to get out of here, you know. Like,
yeah.
and visualizing it as like a sometimes an entity or like a muck, you know.
Yeah.
And physically taking a shower, you know, and washing it off yourself, and thinking about that as like a ritual that does well.
A lot of people will write it down and burn it.
Yeah.
That made a lot of sense to me, you know, because the expression of it, and then the transmutation of it into a different chemical, even, you know, like it's a literal send off. And I always thought that was an interesting concept too. Yeah, I think it's, I don't want to begrudge people, but most people aren't good listeners. They're waiting for you to shut up so they can speak. And I feel like I just give people enough of an opportunity where they're just like, oh, well, now I can talk to you. And then like in halfway through the conversation, I'm like, I don't know if I signed up for this, you know? Like,
you're in for it now.
Right. And I genuinely love people, and I wish. Sadhguru tells the story of a yogi on his way, you know, analogous wise to a podcast, and he's abused all sorts of different ways as by this group of guys, and then he says, well, I have to go to my podcast, I'll come back and you guys can finish when you're, you know, anything else you have to say. That's a powerful thing to not be able to take that on, you know, because we really are transfers of energy, you know. When I say our meeting, this is going to sound like the love potion of this podcast. It felt so magnetic that, like, that's why I say it almost felt fate wise. It was like, how does that happen? You know, like, it's never happened to me before, but I have met people that I knew almost instantly.
Yeah.
That, like...
yeah, you're just like, oh, you're friends.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah, I know you.
Exactly. To me, it's got to be magnetism. Like I said, I've been obsessed with magnetism. And for whatever reason, our magnetic waves must resonate with each other. Harmonize, I guess, would be the term, you know? But also, I think the same thing is we give other people the... I found...
Yeah.
Sorry.
They want to feel that, you know?
Yeah.
They feel maybe, you know, even if they're, I'm not saying that, like, I don't have bad days or whatever, you know, but maybe some sense of you, some kind of wave kind of makes them feel good, you know?
Yeah.
So then they want to, you know, talk to you. Like, I was with a friend of mine that you know, Andrew, and we were having coffee, and I go, Andrew, look around the room. Pick out anybody in this room who you'd want to talk to. And there's probably like, I don't know, at least 50 people in there, you know? And he's like, I would talk to that guy. And I go, me too. That's the one I'd pick. And it's like, just how he looked.
Yeah.
How he presented himself, how he felt, you know? Just from looking at him instantly, I knew that's the guy out of all these people I'd talk to.
Yeah.
And Christy, my wife, she's really good at that. Like, she'll sit down, you know, and I don't even notice it. And she's like, oh... she starts talking to somebody, and it's like, okay. And she's like, yeah, he just really wanted to talk, you know. And I was like, I didn't notice it, but he did, you know.
Yeah.
They always end up talking to her forever, you know. It's like, oh,
That's interesting. Yeah, I found myself in situations where you find and I don't. Again, I really do like people, so I don't want to make this sound misanthropic. But most people bore the living crap out of me.
yeah,
You know, like I don't care about reality TV. I don't care about really politics. Like I'm not super into all this stuff, or like, you know, and it's nothing. If that's what they're into, that's all for it. But then you meet, like I have a grandfather. Um, Interesting perspective. I'm adopted, so genetically, I'm not like I wouldn't say I'm none of these people genetically, but I have this grandfather from a young age that me and him we were just intertwined with each other. He was thinking in a manner that not only influenced me heavily, but like resonated with me, you know. And I remember experiencing that, like there was something to him, like the way he experienced life was much more similarly to me. And I've found that through other people, you know. It's like it's almost how they approach it instead of how, and which I guess would come back to the energy waves they put off, you know. But like, yeah, you can. It's weird to say that, you know. It sounds so woo woo to say you could pick someone out of a room full of people who you'd want to talk to, but the fact is, and we're sculpting our magnetic waves
yeah,
all the time,
oh
right?
yeah,
You know, like for good or bad, you're broadcasting a magnetic energy. And it's funny, even we use the terms positive and negative. Like,
yeah,
it's not a coincidence that it's
right,
positive or negative. And if you're negative, you're going to attract positive people. But because that's the way it works, but
right,
you're just gonna suck their negativity or their positivity away. They're not gonna transfer their positivity to you, at least the way it feels
yeah,
like, you know. But there are some people who can increase their positive flow so much that they can bring things back that direction. I just feel like Western culture lives on the negative side, so
yeah,
everything leans in that way.
yeah.
But
Well, like even you know, like online, oddly enough, I was in this gaming group, and they wanted me to do this like interview with this guy. So, and I reached out to him, and immediately I started feeling like this connection to him, and I
mm-hmm.
was like, hmm. And so I just kept talking to him, you know, and I didn't know him. I was just chatting, you know. We were over voice chat, and um, and at the time, you know, I had a lot of neck problems and stuff too, and I still do. And so eventually I was started asking him about his neck, and he also had neck problems. And so you know, I found this commonality with friends that I have is they commonly have neck trauma
Mm-hmm.
or headaches and things like that. And so, you know, going back to Kriya Yoga and all this stuff too, is like certain electrical events that happen in the body and also can be stimulated through like neck trauma is um I think it can create like you know, headaches and things like that. And also like I think it creates like mental and physiological changes in the body that make you act a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people that have those kind of align with each other too. It goes back to that compression. You know, if you have more, say, current going through your body or more of that magnetic field and you're able to compress it, then you release more of a feeling to other people too. You have a different field.
Right.
So I think it's all related. Like, you know, again, to like the alchemy, it's like whatever happens on the lowest level happens on the highest level too. So like the physiological um, actions that happen to us physically can change us mentally and also magnetically and also spiritually, and then it affects other people and ourselves. So like it's kind of like almost a joke to me now that when I like somebody, I ask them about like their physical problems they have, and then you know, and I'm like, does your neck hurt, you know, and things like that, and they're like, yeah, my neck hurts, and I'm like, where does it hurt, you know, and they show
Yeah.
me same spots.
I
And it's like,
hired
yeah,
sorry, I hired a 21-year-old kid at work, and I knew almost immediately I liked him. and I didn't know why. And he's had a couple car accidents, played football, has a bad neck, and he also has a brain cyst that's like affecting the intracranial pressure of his brain, and suffers from headaches. And I just was thinking about, and I have a boss who has a bad neck, and him and I have these intense conversations that are not work related at all, you know, but it's like we're two passing or I don't know, you know, two radio frequencies that could not connect with each other and would have found each other anywhere, you know. And it's an interesting concept to think that my neck is the reason I made all these changes. For me, I had a car accident when I was real young, and I ended up finding out that I broke my neck in the car accident. And I always thought that it was the near-death experience, per se, that changed my outlook. But who knows, you know? Like,
your near-death could be result of your neck, too.
Yeah.
So, like, the pressure increased in your brain, and then you had a compression experience that was considered near death.
Because I know I had to have brain swelling as hard as I hit the steering wheel. I mean, I almost bit my tongue off in the car accident. And like, so, and I bent the steering wheel back, like with my face, you know, so
probably some
a little bit of brain swelling at least, you know. They sent me to the trauma unit, made sure I didn't have internal bleeding, and then sent me home. And it wasn't even until the next day did I realize I almost bit my tongue off. But anyway, so it, you know, it made sense to me, though, because I was this cocky 17-year-old that death had never been presented to, and then I accepted death on that day. And so that transition made sense, but then you brought in this whole intracranial pressure thing, and then I find this thread between everyone, and I have yet to find the link in the chain of someone who thinks like us, who doesn't have, like, suffers from headaches, migraines, you know, or a bad neck specifically. It's always something there, you know. And
I mean, I do EEGs now for a neurologist, so I commonly see patients that have like intracranial hypertension, and you know, I ask them about their experiences they have. And these are kind of where some of my patterns came from, you know, like recognizing some of the patterns in me. These patients kept coming in that were like me, you know, and had the same experiences as me. And a lot of them for like dementia and stuff like that too, though. But I don't necessarily have that. But some of them have, you know, like language problems and things, you know, that I've had all my life. And it's like, that's weird. And enough people came in, you know, with similar problems as me, and I liked them, and they have similar experiences as I do too, you know. And it's like, I'm like, I bet you have intracranial hypertension, and how does your neck feel, you know? And I commonly ask them, like, how does your neck feel? Does it hurt right here, you know? And I'm touching their neck, and they're like, oh yeah, it kind of does hurt right there. I'm like, I'm like, maybe you should get that checked out. Maybe you need a CT scan of your neck just to make sure, you know. Things like that, just to try to like help them, you know, nudge them, be like, maybe you should check that out. But, you know, who knows if they'll. And I teach them, like, I try to teach them a little bit like breathing practices, because a lot of them have like intense anxiety and they're on a bunch of medications for it. And I'm like, well, you know, like maybe try breathing, you know. It's free and it doesn't hurt you. So just try to breathe better.
Good luck getting people out of the brainwashing of this pill's going to be the next matter.
Yeah, I'm not they're not coming off their pills, you know. Like, one thing I really notice is like the pharmaceutical industry's like grasp on these these situations is outrageous too. Like, many people are on countless meds that I don't even know like these names, you know, like I didn't even know like people could be on those drugs too, you know. It's just really surprising. So it just made me really aware of like, I need to pay attention to myself. I need to like try to help myself heal versus like just dumping a load of medication and hoping for the best, you know. Because that's where we're at, like 100% honestly. Like, we're at the point where doctors have no idea how to treat people. Like, at least the neurologist, you know, that
a doctor only understands how the human body works.
Like, just load them with meds, dude. And hope that one of these meds will help them.
Right. They have a basic platform that they say if you have one of these series of things, they'll either give you antibiotic, steroid, or, I mean, there's some other stuff, right? Like, for me, the big one, and if you suffer from depression, I'm terribly sorry that you do. And I would recommend microdosing mushrooms over going and getting antidepressants. The people, first of all, the withdrawals off antidepressants are very serious. Like, once you get on an antidepressant long enough, you should absolutely consult your doctor before you ever get off of them. And when they say consult your doctor, he'll be able to tell you that you might think about committing suicide for a long time after you get off this antidepressant. And he doesn't really have a solution for it other than he knows when he put you on this that if you ever get on it, it might be even worse, Benzos, or as people, Xanax, or I think they're some of the most pernicious of drugs because, in my opinion, what they're doing is disconnecting you from the subconscious. It's actually what I think alcohol does too, and this is the reason you black out. Memory is stored in the subconscious, not in the brain or in the physical. So once you've drank enough, you're disconnected. Memory's not getting back from the conscious, right? At least my theory. I'm not proving anything. But so these drugs, and Americans are loaded on alcohol and Xanax, and I'm fine if you want to drink. I'm not here to proselytize and say you need to live a straight life. Trust me, I don't. But we do need to be aware of how not only sick we are from unnatural living patterns, but from the way they prescribe medications to us. It still blows me away that we advertise pharmaceuticals on that you go into your doctor and tell him about a medication. Oh, by the way, the pharmaceutical company's working him on the back end too. So
I hear them in the office, dude. They like come in and they're like trying to push another drug. I'm like, oh my god, like.
They're working both ends.
Yeah.
They're selling you and the doctor, so you and the doctor can get together and put you on a medication.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And I don't know that humans can heal themselves from everything.
No, yeah.
But for sure, someone who suffered from anxiety. I mean, full-fledged partial panic attacks throughout the day, and I know people. I've had real panic attacks. I wasn't replicating cardiac arrest like a true panic attack can, but I was having debilitating shutdown anxieties too much right now, and it's something that
it's common,
right, really common. And I even have this friend, and I'll leave names out and stuff like this, who I suggested breathing or going for a walk, and she says both of those trigger my anxiety, so I stop. And it's like, because doing anything triggers your anxiety, and you need to do the healthy stuff through that,
right?
Because once you push through that, the reward on the other end is so much. Like, it's hard. You get a few months out, I'm no longer anxious. It's easier to mess around and not do the practices that avoided them. But as soon as they come back around,
you forget.
Yeah, and it's miserable to live life. Anxious, stressed out, like the way the average American does. It's getting worse, and I mean, not to get, but like the how little people's money goes. Like it just doesn't go very far. They want to turn America, it feels like, into just slums and ghettos filled with people trying to survive off the little as possible. But I don't know. Anyways, that was a long diatribe away from the original point. Sorry, I do that sometimes.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I think it comes back to, what you were saying with or what we were saying before about magnetism and stuff. Like when connecting to that thing, like if you really think about it as the compression itself being like being love, the good feeling that you get, the bliss, right? Not like sex or an orgasm, like the really blissful, feeling that you get, and that's hard to describe. But I think many of us have had that experience where it's not like coming from something, it's like internal, right?
Yeah.
And it just drives you. I think that like when you are able to actually do that thing, like compress, even accidentally, you feel that love, you feel that connection. It's a thing that it wants that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
All life wants it to happen because it's kind of an act of creation, right? And so it wants that to happen. And so when you do that, you feel good, and that's where it comes from. So
Right.
like when you're anything that you do that separates you from that thing makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
And so the further away you get from that, the worse you feel, the more anxious you feel, the more depressed you feel, the more out of touch of reality you feel. And and then, and it leads to horrible disasters. And I don't want to make it seem like spiritual practices don't make you feel bad, like
Mm-hmm.
self exploration makes you just feel great, that's not true. Like I've had like the last week like some rough times because I'm seeing society and things, that I used to be interested in is not really like entertaining anymore,
Yeah.
and so really it's like a struggle of like entertainment, what does that mean? Why do I feel like I have to be entertained all the time, and like why um and I can't be entertained by those same things anymore. Like really used to be interested in politics and like especially the COVID situation and not the Ukraine thing, thank God. Um, my whatever happened before that where I was like, no, I'm not entertaining myself with this stuff. And um but like Reddit and stuff like that. And this circle of like mesh that these people make in the forums and stuff like that where they're just like bickering and fighting with each other. They actually enjoy the fight, that's
Yeah.
why they're there. They're not there to like learn. They're there to like enjoy the comment fight, the
Yeah.
battle. And
I used to go. I called it sparring. I
yeah,
would go
oh
spar
yeah,
with people online.
that's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
same thing with TV, like watching the news, like I I generally don't believe in anything the news says anymore.
Yeah.
I've seen enough where I'm like, yeah, they're just lying. It's just entertainment of fear. And so I'm like, but I sometimes turn it on and watch it,
Uh huh.
and it's entertaining. But now I'm getting to the point where that's no longer entertaining. And so all these things are just narrowing my world down more and more and more to the point that I have to look at myself,
Yeah.
because that's the only thing left. And I'm like, that's scary,
Yeah.
you know. It's hard to deal with.
Well, and I think that's the reason a lot of people would shy away from psychedelics or even pot. And you'll hear people like I've heard people over my life say, "I don't like pot. It makes me like paranoid or think too much." And I would tell you that's what opened my eyes. Is I lived my life one way without the fear of repercussions on anything, and then all of a sudden I got exposed to like, hey, like not only are you the flaw of your world, but your habits are
Yeah.
creating bad results, And so I've
Yeah.
I've always found, and it's funny, a guy I'm super a big fan of named Jocko Willink. He's a former Special Forces commander. He has this thing about ultimate accountability. Like at the end of the day, and this is any of the mystics would tell you, I mean, this is your own personal experience. You can't change what any external thing happens around you. So you need to accept responsibility for everything
Mm.
and work through it. And maybe you can't change it, but you can influence it. You can influence anything. And I would say, all right, you have cancer and chemo's not working. You're not necessarily going to be able to cure your cancer, but you can influence the direction your body takes. I mean, you could change your diet to stop feeding the cancer, right? You could do all sorts of stuff to try to change the direction, and that's a capability for anything inside the body. And I just I find it a lot. People want to excuse aspects away out of their control. And I get that things happen to you, things happen to me, right? But like at the end of the day, it all comes down to how do I respond to it? How did I see it or predict it coming? Usually wrong. I almost
Yeah.
never predict it right. But at the end of the day, the most successful people are the people that can model the future and try to see any which direction it's coming from and respond to it, right? They're not waiting for the external resonance to direct them. Like, all too often, people will look at someone successful and say, well, if I just had the opportunities they had, I would be successful. In my head, I go, probably not. Like, I don't know that I would either, you know? Like, it's a constant everyday battle, but so is spirituality. It's as above, so below. Like, in the physical world we live in, where I have to go put food on the table and pay my rent, I take this attitude into it. But I think it goes the same for the spiritual accountability to myself, of not being something that I'm not trying to be too much more that I am. I love these concepts. I try to talk to people about them, and then I often feel like I overstep my boundaries because people really aren't asking to have these conversations,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, it's anyways, so
No, that was great, man. I think that's a good spot to end on there for this episode, and
yeah,
um, you know,
it'll only get better.
yeah,
Yeah.
it can only get better. Um,
If you sat through this one, kudos.
we'll be having more in the near future here, and if you want to follow along, just or you have something to say, you can post
Join
in the
the
comments
Discord.
or join
Yeah.
the Discord, and
I'll be on it now after this podcast for sure.
we'll see if it grows. And
Yeah, we'll see if anyone ever pays attention.
yeah,
So we're gonna talk anyway, so whether we do it
Yeah.
in the mics or not, you know. But and we'll come up with subjects. I'm really curious to see what people have in mind for subjects, what they would like to be talking
Yeah.
about.
yeah. I mean, if somebody has something that they're interested for us to riff off of, or whatever you want to call it, then give us an email or whatever, or post in the comments, and I'll make sure that Chet and I both know before. We'll try to stay on the topic. Probably not, though. But
We'll try. Yeah, no promises. So we often wind to lots of different roads through our conversations. So,
yeah,
but...
this is pretty normal. All right. So until next time, thanks for listening.
Wind to lots of different roads through our conversation.